All right, welcome everybody. We'll give it just a moment and then we'll get started with our Conquer Your Career session today. Okay, I see people coming in from the waiting room, so that's fantastic. Well, let's get going. Welcome everyone. My name is Tony Phelan and I'm a program manager for MBA programs at Forte. Thank you so much for joining us today for Conquer Your Career Leadership Development Programs. This event is part of Forte's Conquer Your Career virtual series, which offers an inside look at what it's like to be a woman with an MBA working in various different fields. So let's get started. Leadership development programs can be an interesting next step for MBA candidates, as they're often designed to offer a breadth of diverse professional experiences within a company. Our panelists today have explored these opportunities and will share their perspectives, discussing the knowledge, skills, and abilities that can help someone to be successful in a similar program at their future employer. We will be recording this session today, and it will be available on our website and sent to all registrants following the session. And if you have questions for the panelists, we might have time for audience questions at the end today, so please use the Q&A feature to submit any questions rather than the chat. All right. So diving into introductions, first I'd like to introduce you to Allie. So Allie graduated with an MBA from MIT Sloan and is currently a senior manager, vendor management, furniture at Amazon. So Allie, please tell us a little bit more about your career journey.
Hi, Tony. Thanks so much for having me today. I'm excited to speak with you all about my career journey. I'll start with my undergrad experience. I graduated from Williams College, so liberal arts background in economics and sociology. Spent my early career in New York City, primarily in the beauty industry and consumer insights and brand management. And it was during that time that I really developed a passion for retail and consumer goods. But I wanted to round out my experience with some more quantitative analytical background. And so that brought me to MIT Sloan, where I did my MBA. I graduated in 2018. During my time there, I was part of the Retail and Luxury Consumer Goods Club and really narrowed in on career paths in that area. And so I interned at Amazon as part of the Retail Leadership Development Program while at Sloan, received an offer to return full time after graduating. And when I joined Amazon, I started in the home improvement group. I spent time as a senior marketing manager, rotated into product management after that, building shopping experiences for smart home products throughout the customer journey. Then I became a manager of vendor management, leading electrical and heating, lighting and fans, light bulbs, some fun home improvement categories. Then became a senior manager of product management, leading a cross-functional team across business development, marketing, product management, discovering new opportunities for customers and selection and home improvement. And then most recently, I moved to senior manager of vendor management, where I lead the furniture business on Amazon, which is a really exciting space because Amazon was built to ship books quickly to customers, and it's not quite as easy to do that with heavy, bulky furniture. So as you can tell from my career path, I went through a number of different functions, growing scope over the past 7+ years at Amazon. On a personal note, I live in Seattle. I have 3 children, a dog, a husband who I live with here. All of my children were born during my time at Amazon, so it's definitely a balancing act. But that's a little bit about myself and my career journey.
Incredible. Okay, I can't wait to learn more. Okay, next, I'm pleased to introduce you to Cara Damon. Cara graduated with an MBA from Keenan Flagler and currently works as the Senior Manager for Strategic Enablement at Vanguard. Cara, welcome. Could you tell us more about your career?
Sure. Thank you for having me. Let's see. I will start with undergrad. I attended Cornell University. I studied a lot of bio and chemistry in support of a degree in human nutrition. So that was an asset because I went on to become a registered dietitian for 10 years. Variety of roles, different scope, but I decided to change my career path. So that meant I learned a lot when I went to business school at UNC Keenan Flagler in North Carolina. This was where I took and loved my very first finance courses, classes in venture capital, got experiential learning, which is a fabulous experience for me. I did do my summer internship between the first and second year of business school at Vanguard, in it's called a retail strategy and offer type of project. And it was also a huge learning lesson for me. I chose to return. I entered the leadership development program in August of 2023. So I've completed 3 rotations and have I've been in a full-time role now for about a year in strategic enablement in the investment strategy group. This is a business-focused role that amplifies the impact of research being done in-house at Vanguard. Can't wait to share a little bit more.
Thank you so much, Kara. All right, last but not least, I'm excited to introduce you to Christy. Christy completed her MBA at the University of Virginia Darden School of Business and now serves as Director of Special Projects and Chief of Staff at DaVita. Christy, please tell us a little bit more about yourself and your professional experience.
Thanks, Tony. And a lot of what my fellow panelists have said resonates quite a bit. So excited to be here with you all today. As Tony mentioned, my name's Christy. I have been at DaVita since graduating from my MBA, but before business school and in undergrad, I had a very circuitous path. I thought that I might be a social worker someday. I spent my early career working with individuals who were involved in the justice system in a diversion style program and really loved the opportunity to have therapeutic interactions with clients, but started getting really interested in bigger picture system issues and wondering how I could make an impact there. I then moved from Virginia, where I was, out to Colorado and had an opportunity to work at a startup called Gusto, where we serve small business customers and very mission-driven focused, helping them set up payroll, benefits, all of the really hard things that businesses need to get done. And again, really fulfilling work, loved the mission drive. And while at Gusto, started looking around and noticing that there were really interesting jobs in product and operations leadership. And I had a chance to dabble in a couple things like leading agile teams and process improvement, and felt that going to business school would be just the right next step, as my other panelists mentioned, to kind of flesh out some skills and see a little more of the business world that I hadn't seen. When I entered business school, I knew that I wanted to stay in something operational and something mission driven, and was lucky enough early on to find the Redwoods program at DaVita and have made my career here so far and had a lot of opportunity, which has been really wonderful. Excited to share more as time goes on, but I've spent time out in the field at DaVita in our dialysis clinics, running centers, serving our teammates and patients, and I am now on the back end, so to speak, supporting one of our executives who oversees all of our functions in learning, development, and culture. Looking forward to chatting with you all more today.
Thank you so much, Christy. All right, so let's dive into some of our panel questions. Christy, we're actually going to start with you for this one. So can you tell us a little bit more about what is a leadership development program in general? What are the benefits of them? And then maybe some potential challenges and how you have overcome those.
Yeah, it's a great question, and one to which there is not always a clear answer. So I'm sure as you all are exploring business school, as you're getting into your programs, as you're thinking about what's next, you will hear a lot about LDPs, and they will all be different than one another. So my first bit of advice is just do your research to make sure you understand what that company's unique offering is. Leadership development programs can range from anything that might be a couple months, they might be multi-year, they may or may not involve rotations where you're doing different roles. I can share a little bit about DaVita's program. It's called Redwoods, and it is not a rotational program, but it is intended to get you experienced in the core business. And I think that's likely what unites all leadership development programs, is that they are really intended to get you fully experienced in whatever the core business is. And at DaVita, that is dialysis operations. going into a clinic every single day, working with patients and teammates, making sure that we can treat individuals who are in end-stage kidney failure. I think the benefits of a leadership development program are just immense. I think most have kind of cohort style learning. So you'll be with other people who are recently finished with their MBAs and be able to have a core group that you're going through a program with and having a lot of new experiences with. I know for me, none of us had ever managed a dialysis clinic before, so it was all new for all of us, and we were going through those learnings together. Additionally, I think most leadership development programs offer some kind of structured professional development support, whether that's learning opportunities, mentorship, executive sponsorship. DaVita has a lot of kind of wraparound services, if you will, that are a part of the program to help you navigate not only the program itself, but what comes next for you at the company. And I think the challenges with any program are that eventually you will have to decide and figure out what's next for you. It is kind of nice in some ways to get into an LDP because you're like, okay, I've got my next step figured out. I can check the box. I feel good about what I'm doing after business school, but there will continue to be that next step, whether or not it's a rotational program where you need to make some decisions about where you want to find yourself in the company and putting yourself in a position to maximize whatever those opportunities are.
Wonderful. Thank you,
Thanks,
Christy.
Tony.
Yeah, it sounds like a great way to really get to know a company or an industry. So awesome. Okay, Allie, what components of a leadership development program make it effective at developing future business leaders? How might our attendees determine the right program structure for their personal needs and goals?
Sure. So some of this might sound a bit redundant with what Christy just mentioned. I'll start with how these development programs develop you for the future. So the first part is that, at least at Amazon, it has a really robust training ground to just hit the ground running. If you're an industry hire at Amazon, there aren't quite as many resources or safety nets when you first start to really accelerate your learning and just jump right into things. Whereas when you're in a leadership development program, you have a cohort, you have structured trainings for your first few weeks, and it just enables you to ease into things, get the lay of the land so that when you then settle into your role, you feel like you know a little bit what you're doing and you have resources and people to go to when you do have questions. The next piece I would mention is really a built-in trust for the cohort of individuals that are part of a leadership development program. These people that are part of a program, they're team members that we're investing in and that we want to succeed and have long-term careers at our companies. And so what that looks like is having conversations with them when it's time for rotation, figuring out what are new opportunities that we can place them in, and really investing in their development and entrusting them to take on new responsibilities that might be completely foreign to something they've done in the past. Maybe you go like I did from marketing to product management to vendor management. Those are all extremely different functions, but I had the trust and the flexibility to move into those different functions because I was part of a rotational program that expected that of individuals. And then as far as considerations and things that people should think about when they're looking at different programs, you heard different experiences from myself, Christy, and Cara. Christy mentioned being in the field and then moving into her corporate office, I believe. Cara mentioned, I think I caught 3 different roles in 2 to 3 years, so very short rotations. So program flexibility is important. Are you someone that wants 18 to 24 months in a role to really understand the lay of the land and develop impact? Or do you like quick rotations and changing rapidly to build a robust skill set and then move into after the rotational program where you really want to settle? That's something to think about. And then location as well. Do you want to change geographies? Is that compatible with your lifestyle and your personal goals over the next few years? Or do you want to be in a rotational program that's really headquarters focused or it's remote always, and so you can be set in one place? Those are just a couple things I would think about when considering different opportunities.
Great. Thank you, Allie. That's super helpful and gives people something to think about as they look at these programs. So going off of that, Kara, can you talk a little bit about how your rotations were structured and what were the different kinds of roles or projects that you got to work on? How did you balance that and balance exploring lots of different functions and trying to develop expertise in many different areas?
Yes. So rotation structure, Vanguard, like my colleagues have said, LDPs are structured differently. At Vanguard, there are 3 rotations or jobs that you do for 5 months each. And my orientation was toward general management. There are other tracks as well at Vanguard, which are you can be more oriented toward the business of financial advice, a little bit more investments focused, or even more sales focused. But for me, general management was a nice place to start because, in all candor, coming from a career in healthcare, I knew enough to know that I didn't know so much about financial services or Vanguard as a company. So a general management leadership development program within Vanguard was an opportunity to learn about the business and explore what the roles were like. So I had 3 opportunities to do that. They're short, they're 5 months each, which is a little bit difficult because you have a new manager every 5 months, you get a new project, and you meet new teammates and reestablish yourself. So it's certainly a balancing act between having that type of learning, very experiential and on the job, and actually driving an impact or driving a project to success. But I was also supported by a leadership development program manager, the rotation manager, and my colleagues in the program called a cadre at Vanguard, 10 other people that entered in the same type of program. My rotations were in Vanguard's emerging wealth management division. I supported a client segmentation strategy, which is essentially applying a model to understand which clients, how do we bucket them and serve them with offerings, products, solutions, support in the right way. My second rotation was a very strange one. It was basically a big enterprise project for Vanguard, which was on a team looking at how we would open Vanguard's first office in India. It was confidential at the time, public now, so I'll share that. And then the third one, and there's a theme here, but the third one was also was to sort of set the strategy for the team I lead now in investment strategy group. It's easy to sort of look back and say concretely exactly what it was I was there to do, but it did not always feel like that in the moment of being there in that job. And that's because I sort of ended up articulating to my program manager, I like working at the intersection of taking a strategy and going with implementation, and where that lands and what success looks like is not always entirely clear in the moment. So that project-based work is where I found some success. So in discovering a little bit about that, I had to do that by exploring a couple of different functions and getting some more expertise in different parts of Vanguard to even know that was a possibility here in particular. But the LDP, it's just such a unique opportunity to be able to have at Vanguard. It's like a rotational experience to get a bit smarter about what it is you want to do coming in new.
Great. Thank you, Kara. Christy, we'll go to you for the next question. Can you talk a little bit about how you built and maintained relationships, or still do, across different teams and functions during your leadership development program? And were there particular people who influenced your growth the most? What did you learn from collaborating with all these different types of people?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Tony. I would go back to, there were a couple of things I mentioned when I first kind of introduced LDPs, and I feel very grateful that the program I found myself in had a lot of these structures set up for me. I think it's really daunting anytime you join a big company. Many of you have not worked for a big company before, and then all of a sudden you're thrown into a business with 70,000 plus people, and it's sometimes just difficult to know which way is even up, or what are different functions named at this company. It looks a little different from what I experienced in nonprofit world and startup world. And during that time, I really leaned early on my executive coach and my mentor to just help me even understand, how is the business structured? What happens in different parts of the organization? And always asking, can you connect me with someone who might be interested to share a little more about their journey and share why they are on X, Y, or Z team and what keeps them there? And I really just continue to leverage continued connections as I met more people. As I got to know areas of the business a little better, I just continued to ask, who else would you recommend I chat with to learn a little more? And again, feel very grateful some of those structures were set up with the mentor and executive coach that I had. I also, though, really leaned on my cohort mates. We happened to be spread out across the entire country and had a wealth of different pre-business school experience. So they were people that I could really lean on to ask what I felt like were the questions I might be less excited to ask my mentor or my boss. I could ask them to help me understand their geography or their area of the business that they were working on a project in. And just continued again to kind of build as much knowledge as I could about how things get done at this particular company, since how things get done everywhere looks so different. And I think the people that influenced my growth the most just happened to be among those kind of random connections that I made. I really am grateful for my mentor and my executive coach. And one of the people with whom I'm closest was a random connection that I made in my process to get to know and explore a little more about the company. And I happen to be now working full time on that team that this person is on. So it's really partially an exercise in putting yourself out there and just leveraging any of those cohort mates or more formal structures that the LDP might set up for you, and just continuing to be curious as you go through your program.
Thank you,
Tony,
Christy. Oh yeah,
if
please
I could
add on.
add to that, I just wanted to underscore the importance of the peer cohort in these rotational programs. I started in marketing, and there were 8 others, individuals that were also in marketing functions when I started. And so we would meet monthly and just talk about questions. What were we dealing with? Where were we having challenges? And we really supported each other that way. And then when I moved into new functions like vendor management for the first time, I was able to reach out to some of my peers who had started in vendor management and say, okay, what are your top recommendations of where I should lean in when I'm getting up to speed here? Or I don't actually understand this metric. Can you help me think through this? And so you have a built-in base of people that can support you in your current role as well as in transitions, because they've already been in those roles. And then finally, the relationships go well beyond like your first 2 rotations. So my current role, I actually arrived at because one of my peers from 5.5 years prior reached out to me and said, hey, my manager is hiring this role. I think you'd be really good for it. You should talk to him. And so it's always important to have mentors. It's always important to stay in touch with prior managers as you rotate. But I also wouldn't, I would underscore the importance of staying in touch with your peers as well, because you never know when that might help and you can help them too.
Great. Thank you, Christy and Allie. It almost sounds like a kind of an extension of business school a little bit. You get to meet all these great new people who have your back and you're kind of going through the same stuff. So that's cool. Okay. Well, Allie, I'm actually going to go back to you for our next question. I'd love to know, how can somebody make the most out of their rotational program experience, and how did you ensure that what you were doing and the impact you were making was visible to those higher ups, those key decision makers?
Sure. So for the first part, making the most out of your rotational program experience, I think when you're new in role, it's really easy to be curious. I was in marketing. I set up time with our in-stock lead. I set up time with our vendor management lead. Different functions, just to understand, what are your priorities? How is what I'm working on important to those, or how can it be important to those? Just to understand the broader landscape and the key priorities for the organization. That's really easy to do when you're new and you're still figuring out everything that's on your plate and you have a little more time. But you can lose sight of that as you get really busy. Our day-to-day jobs become time consuming in itself. And so it's easy to become more myopic and focus on what is specifically within your field. I would encourage people to keep those touch points, to continue to reach out to different functional leads so that you continue to understand how the dots connect across all the different functions, and you can feed into priorities, which then also might bring about opportunities for you to rotate in new functions and align your projects with those functions down the line. So don't just be curious when you start a job, but maintain that curiosity throughout. And then as far as making sure your impact is visible, I would just be super vocal. Don't wait for someone to tell you rotations coming up, you should start looking around corners. I would always have those conversations with your manager, with your mentor. These are the things I'm really interested in. This is where I want to build new skill sets. Is there an interesting project coming up that doesn't have an owner that I could lean into in the interest of developing those skill sets and supporting the organization? And I think being really vocal about that, taking initiative to drive your career forward, will open up opportunities for you to have high impact projects that can then again translate into new roles in the future.
I love it. That's great advice. Thank you. Okay, Kara, I would love to hear about how you tackled the initial learning curves throughout your leadership development program, especially when you were kind of starting a new rotation. How did you approach those moments? How did you accelerate your learning, and how did you build trust in each new team that you joined?
Yeah, I would add a +1 to what Christy and Allie are saying about the network you either are building or that you come in with your peers, to just be able to ask them questions. That's always a nice, safe place to start to tackle a learning curve. But also there's you want to understand what's in your tool belt. And for me, that was I mean, this is pretty straightforward, but like reading everything that I was given and seeking things out for myself. You want to understand context, what type of business you're in, is it changing, and really try to get a lay of the land outside of your particular job scope, because it can only help you there. I think Allie mentioned exploring with that curiosity, having meetings with people to understand what's your job, what's your role. Maybe you don't ask it that directly, but you are really trying to get some more information to understand, well, what is it your project is? How does it fit in? The role that maybe you're stepping into, what's its place? What is the objective? So relationships and conversations are a great way to do that, and at least at Vanguard is completely expected. But I think part of this is navigating who to talk to, and when can you ask some of the really basic questions and the maybe more structured questions, and having a peer, a mentor, or a trusted manager to navigate some of those like tiny political decisions that come with this learning curve is part of life at a corporation, at least in my opinion, too. So that's also some relationship building. But you know, the learning curve's real, especially for me with a very different industry background. And in some ways, at least at Vanguard, owning that, not shying away from it, that's part of the culture because people do move jobs here. And I think that there's a really great balance of learning as much as you can, but then still showing up and being expected to ask reasonable questions that maybe someone with fresh eyes can see and be curious about, that folks that have been in the role or on the team for 6 years just don't notice anymore. So there's, I tell newer people here, there is a reason you are in the room, and own that even if you're not the one with the most experience. So I think that mindset is really important when we're talking about approaching moments of transition, because in a leadership development program, you're going to feel like the new one every time you start the new job. And it can be daunting, but it's expected.
And thank you so much, Kara. It sounds like I'm hearing this thread of like staying curious and then being okay with being a beginner, consistent. Like you're just always learning, which is exciting and scary, but also fun. So thank you. Let's go back to Christy. So what lessons from your leadership development program have carried over the most throughout your career, would you say? To what extent has it kind of influenced your leadership style?
Yeah, great question. I could probably spend the next 15 or so minutes we have talking about my learnings from my leadership development program. I will spare everyone from that and summarize just a couple themes, but overall, it has remained the time in my career where I learned the most and where I was challenged the most. I think both of those things kind of happen at the same time. And the lessons for me were really around, and Ali just mentioned this as well, it's important to stay visible and advocate for yourself. Even if you are in a program, no one is going to come to you and say, here's the next perfect role for you, here's a promotion. You need to be doing the work to think about what are those things that you want to go do, what are the projects or opportunities that will give you exposure and help you get to the next step, whatever that is in your program or in your just personal ambitions. And in part with that, it's so crucial. I know this has already been hit by this panel, but to lean on your cohort, your mentors, your connections. So many people at every company, and my experience at DaVita has been such that everyone wants to help. I have done multiple case interviews during my time at DaVita, and all of them have been pre-vetted with my cohort mates or my mentors or both. And continuing to make sure that anytime I'm making a decision or struggling with a project or thinking about what's next in my career steps, that I'm continuing to lean on those individuals. And the last thing I'll say is, I think what struck me from a leadership perspective, especially coming out of business school and coming from a non-traditional background where I didn't feel as confident in my analytical capabilities as the next person, it is so much about how you do things, not the what that you're doing. At DaVita, we talk about the what and the how, and I'm so confident that anyone on this call, you can learn how to do any job. You can learn how to do any analysis or figure out project management, learn a new skill set, whatever it is. The most important thing is how you get work done. I've seen many incredibly bright people in leadership development programs that struggle with the leadership component and struggle to engage with their team and struggle to meet a team where they are. And that how is so much more important than how much stuff you can get done or how detailed or good your analysis might be. And it's all balance. It's all things that can be learned, but I continue to come back to, it's about the people around you. It's about your team. It's about how you get work done as much as it is about what you're producing.
Amazing career advice, Christy. Thank you so much.
Can I
Cara,
add one more point
please,
too?
yes.
Something I've learned as a leader through this program. The experience of being new in a role and not knowing your function, your team is really daunting. And I just keep that in mind as a people manager. We talk often, rotations at Amazon are typically 18 months or so. So first 6 months, you're kind of learning the lay of the land. Next 6 months, you're starting to deliver. And then the final 6 months plus in your role, you're looking around corners and finding new opportunities, and you're really accelerating things for your business and your team. And so I keep that in mind always as a people manager when I have new hires on my team, that I give them grace. It takes time to learn the job. And if you make a mistake in your first 3 months, like that's fine. If you make a mistake anytime, it's fine as long as we learn from it and move forward. But I think having had that experience of changing roles quite often and being in that first 6 month phase of not knowing which way is up, is just something that has given me more appreciation for what it takes for new people to join my team and supporting them in that process.
Wonderful. Thank you, Allie, for adding that on. Okay, Cara, how did you decide which post-program opportunity to pursue, and what factors kind of guided that decision? To what extent did you evaluate your potential roles in terms of like long-term growth, strategic importance to the company, all of that good stuff? Can you talk a little bit about how you decided which direction to go after your program?
Yeah, so I'll share just a bit about how the latter half of a leadership development program looks, at least at Vanguard, because I'm sure that it's a little different for each LDP. But as you're coming up on your third rotation, midway through, looking to end it, the conversation around what full-time job will you take that is not rotational after that is the decision for that launch role. And that conversation occurs not only just in that time period, but what you're building upon, as others before me have said about like, what do you like? How are you advocating for yourself? What are your skills? So for me, that looked like that it was that ongoing conversation, but my assessment was a little bit more toward long-term growth at Vanguard because I wanted to build a foundation of seeing different areas of Vanguard because of my interest just in general management. That is to say, a little bit more breadth than depth into a given function. If I wanted to go marketing, I'd certainly orient toward that. But with general management, it is a little bit of a being a good manager in many parts of the company type of long-term growth. So factors that guided my decision were that a little bit about the success or sort of the approach of the manager that sat not just directly, but just over that division, the growth for the area, and then what skills I was trying to build. To be honest, I think I had all of these thoughts in my head as I was looking at opportunities, but what happened for me was that I ended up remaining in the role in investment strategy group, moving out of the rotation and taking that on as a full-time job. So I was very fortunate in a way of at least getting to create a little bit of my job and the team that I ended up leading, but that's fairly unusual. I will say, though, there are other things you can think about in terms of, like I said, skills you want to build. Are you going to do a little bit more strategy or implementation, function-related things around marketing versus sales or operations? The impact you're driving, do you want it to be more client-focused or shared services? And you don't have to think about all of these things, but you might anchor to the several that are important to you. That helps narrow down the universe of choices.
Great. Thank you so much, Cara. All right. I think we have time for maybe one audience question, and I'm seeing a theme throughout the ones that we're getting. I would love to hear from any of you about the recruitment process. What does recruiting look like? How do you stand out? How might it look different from your peers going through recruiting for other industries? Any resources you would want to give somebody, tips and tricks, all of the above, any of the above. Anyone who wants to jump in, please feel free.
I can take a quick swing and then would love to hear from my fellow panelists as well. I know this is going to be an unsatisfying answer, but I think it really depends on the program and the company. But what I would say and recommend, and what I mentioned earlier, is really deeply do your homework to understand what that LDP looks like or means. I have done many interviews and conversations and had people on the other side who don't know the nature of the program at DaVita. And it's really important to have done that research beforehand so you know whether it's rotational or not, what the geographic elements are, the little things that will show the potential employer that you've really done your research and are interested in that function. I think the other piece is figuring out through, again, conversations and networking with people at your school who have gone through the program, or just getting in touch with the program itself at that company, getting really clear on what's important to them, since every program will have really different things they're looking for. I can give another example here. At DaVita, I am so often asked, oh, I don't have healthcare experience. Is that going to be a barrier? And my answer is always, absolutely not. DaVita is not looking for healthcare experience. Their focus is really on your leadership and who you're going to show up as when you're leading a team and working with patients. And anyone can do that, whether you've been an investment banker before business school or you worked at a nonprofit like me before business school. And get clear on those elements, again, whether it's mission or what qualities they're really looking for, since it will be just quite different across each program.
I would just echo that and say that if we're talking about this theme of recruiting, how do we know if it is the right choice for you? I think something I struggled with early on in business school, as I was thinking about it, where do I want to go? What do I want to do with this opportunity? Is narrowing in for myself exactly what I wanted or where I wanted to be 5 years out. There's a lot of optionality there. But as you are working through that, or at least in my case, to Christy's point, the research that you do helps you really understand what is this program offering and how does it talk about itself. And then you can at least start to assess, does that sound interesting to me? Could I try it as an intern for the summer and get a feel for this company, this culture? I think with leadership development programs, you're committing sort of in some ways, especially if they're rotational, to multiple areas of the business over your career, and embracing that type of larger learning and delivering success in each of your roles. So you want to be aligned to the overall company picture, in my opinion, as well. And all of that nuance helps inform, is this one right for me? I would narrow in a little bit and not just think, is the LDP right for me? There's a lot of variability.
In our final 30 seconds, the only piece I would add is use your peers in your MBA program and talk to them about the interview process. You'll be doing your own research to figure out whether the leadership development program is right for you. I'm sure you'll attend lunch and learns and talk to recruiters at your program. But then when it comes time for the interviews, your peers who've come from those companies are going to know, what is the company looking for? What's the structure of the interviews? How best can you prepare? So have those conversations up front to make sure that you show up with your best foot forward for the interviews as well.
Excellent. Thank you all so much. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today, but huge thank you to Ali, Cara, and Christy for your time and your expertise and sharing all of your knowledge and experience with us. It was a wonderful session. So thank you all so much. I just wanted to mention our next Conquer Your Career will be taking place on November 12th, so you can register for that on our website. And then thank you to our attendees for asking thoughtful questions and being so engaged. As I said at the beginning, this webinar was recorded, and so it will be available on demand on our website and will also be sent to all registrants following the event. But huge thank you to all participants and to our panelists again. We look forward to seeing you at future events, and we hope you have a great day. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.